People get on their horse and they ride it to the end.
We're about kicking the fucking horse out from under you on this show, folks.
Right.
So that you can't ride it all the way to the end. And I gotta tell you, since I started this show, I can't find my fucking horse.
It's the 3rd day of April, 2016, and this is it. We are the Radical Agnostic. My name is John, I'm your host. My co-host, Mark Beef, has a sinus infection. The stowaway guest, however, Brian Richter, is hanging out with his mom. It's her birthday. So with me today at the table of discontents, our other guest, Eddie West.
The worst guest, but at least I'm here.
You're not the worst guest. You're one of the best guests, Eddie West. You mess of a mess, my blessed Bessie. You actually went through hell and high water just to be here, Eddie, and I very much appreciate that.
You're welcome. Good show.
Yeah,
good to be on.
Thanks, man. It's episode 57. We're going to talk about campaign in the ass 2016 politics. We're going to talk about the newest AI, artificial intelligence, slapping around some of the world's intellectual heavyweights. Let us begin, and I'm not sure how much you know about this, my friend, but you remember back in the 90s when the world's greatest chess player, Garry Kasparov, I think he's the winningest grandmaster world champion.
I don't remember the stats, but
yeah,
I think you may be
one
right.
Of them,
but yeah,
at
he
least.
certainly was one of the biggest grandmasters at the time. And
yeah. And they put him up against, was it an IBM computer? Mm-hmm. And it was Deep Blue,
right?
Yeah, and it was like a big server. It was a big block, supercomputer.
And he'd beaten the computer previously.
He had.
Previous iteration.
Yeah, there were different matches. And I think each time it's multiple games in a match.
Yeah, they always do. They always do multiple games.
Yeah.
It almost never is this like a one game thing unless it's some kind of exhibition. If it's like this is the only chance you're ever going to get to play. Well, fine, you might play one game, but normally if you're actually going to measure two players against each other, you do more than one game.
And if I was going to predict what would happen, I would say, well, either the guy destroys the computer or the computer destroys the guy. But interestingly and coolly enough, that's not what happened. Like, he won a couple of the games, and the computer ended up winning the whole thing, though.
And, well, if I recollect, he also bitched and moaned because he felt like they cheated. Or something.
Yeah, there's a whole movie about it. Actually, there's a whole documentary where he's complaining that basically he's saying there's a guy in the box, like there's a guy in there. Like,
well, his big complaint was that he was under the impression that there would be no changes to the program once it started running. So that he'd be playing it, and then. But in reality, they were also kind of measuring his play. So it was one of those things, well, they didn't change the software per se, but they gave it more data to work with.
Well, at the end of each day, they did tinker with it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they...
But, like, why is that not fair? Like, why is he's allowed to learn at the end of the day, right? Like, he can go look up a book on chess moves.
Well, right, and it's kind of like, is the point to see whether a computer can beat him? I think his complaint boils down to, if you're going to try to make it as coherent as possible, to the idea that the computer did not beat a human, it beat him. It found some weakness to exploit just against him, because they tinkered to specialize it to him.
Right.
Whereas he has to just beat the concept of a computer. The computer only had to beat him.
So you think
I don't agree with him. I'm just trying to make his
No, but if you think if Deep Blue had played another Grandmaster, just a surprise match, that it would have lost.
I think that's what he's trying to say.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's my best understanding of his complaints, because they come across a little weird.
Believe it or not, this chess Grandmaster was a bit of an oddball. And he's made comments recently, political comments about...
they all do. Like, you've seen Bobby Fischer.
Right. Oh, God. He's the Nazi. Yeah.
Still the best chess book I've ever read, though. Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess.
Oh, yeah?
I used to have it. It was a book of problems.
Yeah.
And you could just turn the page and see the answer, and then you flipped, and they were separated enough so you couldn't cheat unless you really tried. And just reading that book and solving the problems always made me slightly better, just for some time.
Now, I wonder if you could sort of group humanity into two groups, those who wanted Kasparov to win and those who wanted the machine to win. I would have been on the Kasparov side. I think I was. I mean, I was alive, so...
Yeah. I remember when it happened.
Yeah. Me too.
I was big into chess when I was younger. I'm much more into, I think, the game you're going to talk about, actually. So
cool,
this is something I know about, and why it took an extra 20 years.
Yeah. So one of the huge challenges for creating software that can beat a human being at a game like chess is the astronomical number of possibilities on a chessboard, right? I mean, there's so many different things that can happen mathematically, variables, different games that can be played. And so they were able to, also through the strategies you just mentioned, overcome that obstacle. And then later, and this was much different, there was that Watson, another IBM computer.
Watson is the successor to Deep Blue, became something else, and then that became Watson. So this is, I mean, I'm sure it's different hardware and stuff, but like it's the same program.
Ah, interesting. So that went on. That went on and played Jeopardy. Now, did they play against that awesome Jeopardy guy? Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Yeah,
the guy who won
I think it was. I don't remember the details of it. I'm sure it was an exhibition game, so I think it was just the two of them. Maybe there was a third player, but I don't know. I didn't actually watch that. Ever since Trebek shaved off the mustache, it's just not the same.
Oh, you have the strangest proclivities, sir. You know how much money Trebek makes? He makes like $15 million a year.
Yeah, but it's Canadian.
No, it's not. It's American.
No, I know, I'm kidding.
It's insane how well he's done for himself year
and
after year.
So he's been doing it. He's been on that show since forever, and it's funny because if he ever did retire and pulled like a Bill Nye, people would buy him too. People, Bill Nye gets to talk because because we grew up listening to him tell us about science.
True.
If Alex Trebek tried to start speaking about science, unless he went like off the deep end, he would probably get just as much respect as because they'd be like, well, it's fucking Alex Trebek.
Right.
He's got the card.
Right. I was gonna say no. Bill Nye's like more intelligent, but probably not. Like Bill Nye's has like an associate's in physical education or something.
It's like mechanical engineering. But and I don't know what Trebek's got, but if you've
not
ever
that degrees mean anything about intelligence anyway. I'm living proof of that.
But he also Trebek, if you ever watch the episodes where somebody is being stupid or something like or where he's sharp, like he knows his stuff.
True, for sure. And he's been on that game show stage for 28 years or something, so he knows how to. Yeah, he knows how to do it.
Just from osmosis, he probably knows it all now.
Yeah. Anyway, so Watson beat the Jeopardy guy, and that was another victory for artificial intelligence.
To be honest, though, I would probably argue. I mean, depending on how it was constructed, I'm less impressed with that than with chess.
Well, I guess. Now, did it have to hear and interpret the language on its own? Like,
I don't know.
It must have. There couldn't be a guide.
But at this point, my fucking phone can do that.
Right. But yeah, language recognition, though, especially in that weird question-answer format of Jeopardy, I think it was a challenge, at least for them. But,
I'm sure.
And it was just looking stuff up on the internet, right?
Oh, I said that's what I'm wondering. If it was looking stuff up, then I'm a little less impressed because, I mean, again, Google does it,
Yeah.
But if they had to program all the possible data that they thought, like, and they didn't get access to the questions, and so they just had to guess what might be in there, but... I don't think we know enough about that probably to have a good conversation on it. But in the end, it is just fact retention and presenting it in a certain way. I mean, when machines give us information in any kind of linguistic manner, it's always at least somewhat of an achievement. So it's not. I don't think it's that much harder to do it in the question and answer versus doing it in the natural language that we're used to.
Okay, fair enough.
According to Wikipedia, the speed of sound.
Yeah. So what happened is recently, a few days ago, they. No, this is Google. It's the DeepMind program, and then the actual machine has a name, but I don't remember what it is. But it's Google now getting in on the game, and they applied this machinery to a game called Go, Go, which is it a Japanese game? It's from the East.
It's from the East. I think if I recollect correctly, it's originally Chinese, but there is actually two different rule sets. There's subtle differences in like how points are tallied and such.
Yeah.
But there is the Chinese version and the Japanese version. Okay. So whenever you play it, especially with like as a game, like on a digital version, you'll have to pick. Most of the time, the default is on Japanese.
So Go is interesting because it's simultaneously extraordinarily simple and extraordinarily complex. And that's what I mean by that is it's a simple board. It has just a grid work pattern on it, and you have your white pieces, and the other guy has the black pieces.
They're called stones within the context of the game.
Yeah, and they're all the same piece. There's no different pieces like in chess that have different functions. And it's a war game basically, and the idea is to surround the other opponent's pieces and stones. And once you do that to the point where all avenues of escape are blocked off, the enemy's pieces get taken off the board, and then you continue to try to dominate the whole thing.
To try to describe the game for people who may never have played it, there's a game called Pente. And the board looks very similar to that. It also looks somewhat similar to like Othello or Reversi.
Yeah.
It operates very differently, but the board at least somewhat looks like that. The traditional board is 64 by 64.
Right, that's right.
I have one of those boards, and they're fucking huge, and that game will take you a week.
Yeah, I have one too, and I got interested in it after seeing that movie Pi.
Of course, when did you see it? I saw it like 20 years ago now.
Yeah, I saw it the year it came out, so it was like 95 or something, 98, I don't know. But so
that is because I was like, what is that? That's so pretty. And I had played Othello and Reversi before, so like I
and it's so easy to learn. It's a
Would you
great
say
game.
it takes a minute to learn and a lifetime to master?
There you go, Milton Bradley, for ages 9 to 99.
But the big difference, as you were saying before, is that like in chess, each piece has its own special move,
right?
And there's only a limited number of ways the pieces can move. You know, you'll never get a pawn on your own back line. You know, you'll never get one of the bishops that's on the black diagonals. You'll never get it on a white diagonal. I mean, so there's constraints, and there's a limited number of total positions. It's an insanely high number.
Well, I want to actually touch on that because from what I heard, and you can verify this later if you want, there are more combinations of possible board positions in Go. So in other words, different configurations
than
of
atoms
pieces
in the universe.
Than atoms in the universe. I mean, that deserves a pause, I think.
Yeah.
What do you mean atoms? How is that possible?
Well,
64 by 64, but it's just because once you start thinking about it, you can think of any board configuration and then just change it with one piece being moved and then change relative pieces to each other. And it just,
When you start with the board starts off empty.
Right.
And you are placing a piece. So we're not even talking about a board that's completely covered in pieces that you're doing stuff with. This is a board that starts, so you've got a shit ton of places that you can put that first piece down.
Right.
And then a shit ton of places minus one that you can put that second piece down. It's an insane.
Yeah. Well, so to to kill the suspense for you all, what happened was the grand champion, the world champion multiple times over, played this Google DeepMind computer and lost. The computer beat him. The guy did manage to win one game out of 5, I think. He had previously predicted that he would win 4-1 or 5-0 against the machine, and he ended up losing 4-1. So,
and they technically the computer had won after the was it the 4th game?
Yeah.
Just because. It's best out of 5.
It retired, right? It
forfeited.
Forfeited, yeah.
In that one game.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I was more saying that out of the 5, like they continued to play all 5 games just as part of the exercise.
Right,
so
yeah.
the computer had actually won the
because it
tournament.
won 3 in a row. Yeah. So that's the latest in gaming technology news.
There's so many more moves, and it's so much more difficult. Which is so funny because all it is 2 colors of stones on a pretty relatively simple looking board.
I know,
and
it's a fun game.
It is a really fun game.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know you played. We'll have to play at some point.
I'll need you to explain a few of the rules because there's a few things that I never quite could understand. I won't try to explain it visually here, but it's just some sort of corollary rules. I know it's simple, but I couldn't find an answer at the time because like the internet was in its infancy and I had to wait for my modem to connect and stuff. So then I just stopped playing for the last 15 years. People. Campaign in the Ass 2016. It rolls on. The ball is rolling. You know where that expression comes from? In not colonial, but early American history, like 1800 or so, they would have, political campaigns. And like for president and stuff, the guy himself would never actually do any campaigning. It was considered beneath the person to go out there and, pimp yourself out. But what supporters would do, or for local elections, they would get a ball of like paper mache or rubber bands or whatever they had, and they would roll the ball in like a campaign event and add to it, and they would roll it all the way down the street to the next town, the next village, and would roll this ball that was associated with a candidate from town to town.
There's if you ever watch Parks and Rec, there's a bit about that where
Really?
they have one of the big balls. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So Trump, I think he's finally tanked. I think he's going down. He's losing in Wisconsin. He's behind by 10 points in the latest polls. The primaries on Tuesday. What finally, and everyone's been predicting his downfall, so I'm probably wrong again. But what finally seems to have taken him down is it could be the comments he made about abortion, where he said that women, if abortion was illegal and a woman had one, she should be punished legally, and people didn't like that. And then he completely reversed himself on it. Now he's like, no, it's fine. The laws are good the way they are, and I wouldn't punish the woman even if it was illegal and all this stuff. But I seem to think what really got him was posting that picture of Ted Cruz's wife, like a still frame of her in the middle of sneezing or something, and sticking it next to his, a glossy shot of Trump's wife, and just putting that on Twitter. It's like, because no conservative has a problem with Heidi Cruz. So none of them are going to or very few are going to find that appealing. That to them, it really, truly looks 100% petty and childish, even for, dare I say it, even for Trump supporters. So
I don't know, man. I don't have enough faith in that particular wing of American politics. How many delegates does he have now?
He has like 600 or something. He's way ahead. Yeah, he's way ahead of Cruz, who's in second place. And they don't need as many as the Democrats. It's about half. So each delegate counts for more. But I like how everyone's predicting that Cruz could still win this, like it's still an open, no one's saying Trump is the nominee 100%. And yet his lead on Cruz is far larger than Hillary's lead on Bernie. And yet everyone's saying it's over, Hillary's the nominee, even though he's within 200 delegates of her.
Well, to be fair, though, in the Trump case, I think a lot of it is wishful thinking. Like, no. What was it, like the episode of Simpsons when the pig starts rolling down the hill? It's just a little dirty. It's still good. It's still good. It's still good. It's still good. It's just a little airborne. It's still good.
Yeah.
It's still good.
It's fired out of a cannon.
So Trump has almost twice as many candidates as Cruz.
Delegates.
What did I say? Candidates?
Yeah.
Delegates. But people are like, but no, it could happen.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, the only hope is that they'll do a runoff, because as I understand it, if he gets 51%, that's it. The game's over.
It is.
If he doesn't, what'll happen is they'll do one pass through where everybody's supposed to vote the way they're supposed to vote
at the convention,
and then when no one gets a clear majority, they do like a revote.
Yeah, and then those delegates are no longer bound. Right. And well, look, I mean, Trump has played this game in a way that no one expected. He outsmarted the media, which is initially quite impressive. He outlasted every prediction. Every pundit was wrong. I was wrong.
I wasn't, though, just for the record.
Well,
I've called every...
By the way, though, you called our bet too early, because the original bet, as you know, was that what I said was Trump will not be the nominee.
When I weaseled a lot on that bet. If I recollect, first of all, I said that they might try to take it from him, so I was qualifying it to be that he was going to get enough votes to be the nominee. And then secondly, you're right, it's not done yet. So,
he tried to. Trump's strategy has kind of been to try to play every side at once. Like, he would say Mexicans are rapists, and then the next day he would say, I love Mexicans. Mexicans love me. He wanted to just say everything and appeal to everyone,
and it worked.
It's been working. I mean, this is his appeal is pretty narrow, but
this is the party that pimped the idea that you should want to have a beer with your president,
right,
not think that he's competent,
right?
And this is their own strategies coming back to bite them. Oh my goodness, you mean rejecting science and truth all the time is a bad thing?
Yeah.
Oh, well, but when it was working for me, it was great.
And you can't keep playing every side, I think this odd and desperate campaign is close to being at an end, and I still believe he won't get the nomination. But I really think it's this Heidi Cruz thing. Like, no conservative has any bone to pick with her, and they just see him posting some picture of her sneezing, and it's just nobody.
Well, but that you keep in mind that was a response to a PAC doing something similar to him first, which is not to justify. It's just to say that.
It was an anti-Trump super PAC that published the photos of naked.
He thought it was Cruz,
Right. Which I'm sure.
Who knows? Yeah. But the point is, their politics on both sides of the aisle, but we're talking about the Republican side right now. And within there, I don't think, what I think has probably been hurting him the most is the Breitbart thing. Even though Breitbart has been groveling to him anyway.
His campaign manager, that Corey Lewandowski, grabbed this Breitbart reporter who was, heckling Trump for an interview for questions,
which is what reporters do to candidates. Sure, let's not pretend that it would be like it's like Fox News going up to fucking Bob Dole. These are friendly to you.
Yeah, Breitbart's a conservative site, so and this guy's been in trouble before, and
let's not forget that one of his previous campaign managers, or I don't know if she still is one of his campaign managers because I don't pay enough attention to the inner workings, but he hires monsters. One of them said you can't rape your wife, and this one's assaulting people. His people are not good people.
Yeah. So it might be the Breitbart thing. What's interesting to me, when I was thinking it's the Heidi Cruz thing, it was funny to me because it's not for his abortion comments, right?
Oh, no, yeah. It's not for any of his positions.
It's not for killing terrorists' families, another position that he still holds. It's not for his support of torture or his speculation that he might use nuclear weapons against ISIS or in Europe even. The one interviewer was like, will you just say that you won't use nuclear weapons in Europe? He goes, just say it. Just say you won't. And Trump goes, no, I can't take it off the table. Not for his treatment of Mexicans, not for urging his supporters towards violence and stuff, but from posting a mean picture of somebody. But I don't know. So we'll see what happens in Wisconsin and then New York. I mean, he's leading in New York. So
and he hasn't really outlined any real policies. It's never been his policies that helped him succeed. So that's part of why I don't think it's going to be his policies that'll bring him down. It makes me think of that old saying, you can't reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something similar going on here. Nobody can defend with a straight face anything he's come close to saying as a policy. I mean, now with a straight, I'm sorry, I'll make Mexico pay for the wall. That's nonsense. That's just nonsense. Everything that comes out of even conservatives for the most, but they'll still sit there and say, well, but I like what he says. Yeah. Or he tells it like it is, which always makes me want to punch. It's so you're saying it is that Mexicans are rapists? Right. Just to be clear.
So, yeah, and even the cost of the wall, I mean, it's estimated at now $25 billion, where his original thing was, I can do it in... He's like, it costs $6, but I'll do it in $4. And now he's saying it's 18, but the actual number is like 28. But now the real interesting thing about all this is the media, the way they've been taking advantage of this. Now, CNN has had record ratings recently because it's switched to basically 24/7 coverage of quote unquote the race to the White House, but actually the Trump campaign. So, and Fox News and everyone, they've all been making bank on this because everyone's interested. People have been reading Trump articles. Another thing that could kill him is if that starts to wear off. If people stop clicking on Trump articles. If people have had enough of hearing about the guy. And I think there's a weariness, a Trump weariness in the country that is starting to take hold. I mean, this has been going on since long before Christmas, New Year's. I mean, people are going to have enough of this guy eventually. So,
but I mean, they've done studies that show a lot of this kind of stuff comes down to name recognition. Did you ever see the movie The Distinguished Gentleman with Eddie Murphy? When he's got the same name as a dead candidate, and so he just
Mark mentioned that, I think, or Brian. Yeah,
a lot of it just has to do with name recognition. Oh yeah, everyone's tired of hearing about him, but everyone knows his name.
Well, it's the whole reason Hillary's in front because Bernie Sanders won the vote in Arizona 52% to 48% that day. She won because of the hundreds of thousands of early ballots that went in before Bernie had ever come here, done a rally, started putting commercials out. So she's been riding on that wave, and as time goes by, he's picking up steam, and that's an objective fact. And even in the black community, picking up steam, slowly but surely. And
slowly but surely?
Yeah, you got to make it rhyme. So, yeah, I mean, she's surfing on that wave of name recognition, and I guarantee you she and Barnaby and everyone else that likes her wishes every primary was tomorrow. They wish it was yesterday. They don't want to wait because even in New York she's slipping where that's her quote-unquote home state because she was a senator there. He's gaining ground, and he's ahead in Wisconsin, so he should win that on Tuesday. And then there's Wyoming in there. Everyone's forgetting about Wyoming, Eddie. And I say, they might only have 17 delegates, but they're still a state, and Bernie's probably going to win it.
All I can ever think of when someone brings up Wyoming is this old... did you ever watch an old Garfield cartoon?
Yeah, of course.
And he had the fake history lessons sometimes in there.
Oh.
And one of them was about, like, Amerigo Vespucci creating the map of the United States, and he ran out of pieces, and so there was just a square in the middle, and so he called it Wyoming, which means... no state here.
It's just empty territory between other states. I don't think...
I mean, obviously that's absurd, but every time somebody
know.
brings it up, I think of John dressed in Italian Renaissance garb writing Wyoming on a map.
Oh, man.
With that Bill Murray sound-alike saying...
Yeah. The Garfield and Friends. I always hated when it went to the Friends parts. I wanted it to be Garfield for the whole thing. But what I wanted to draw attention to is the media's place in this whole thing. How they keep they're keeping him alive. I mean, his whole thing is based on media coverage. That's how he got big right at the beginning. And so they're all culpable in a way. On the other hand, what do you tell them? Don't cover the guy. Like, people want to watch it, obviously.
It's been a known fact about the media since forever. That's where that whole phrase "dog bites" or "man bites dog." It's always been the case that the crazier, weirder stuff gets more coverage because people are more interested in it.
Yeah.
When it rained today,
Yeah.
people are like, whatever. When it rained frogs today,
Right.
everyone rushes to buy a newspaper.
Yeah.
And he's just playing with that, and he's the big thing, the thing he's doing that nobody's done for a long time at least, is he's so willing to say things that other people would find morally reprehensible and that other people would be afraid of taking their chances. Like, because other people aren't as cynical as Trump is being. The terrible things he's saying, other people, even if they weren't necessarily morally opposed to it, they wouldn't say it because they'd feel like, it's sort of like you don't often, when you hear somebody from the Klan talking, they don't talk about white supremacy anymore. Now it's European supremacy,
Right.
et cetera, because even they recognize that they're terrible things, and that people are going to see them terribly. Trump said, yeah, but that doesn't matter because all that matters is the name recognition. So I can talk about how terrible Mexicans are. I can talk about how they're all rapists. And it'll get me in the media, and it won't hurt me.
You found a demographic that could respond. That would
You mean the demographic of the majority of the Republican
But
Party?
it's not, though. It's less than 40% have voted for him thus far. So it's interesting.
The majority of people who voted, at least.
Not the majority, the plurality of people who have voted for him. So not more than 50%. That would be a majority. But more people have voted for him than any other one person. But if you count all the other votes up, I
didn't think it did yet, but okay.
It is. Yeah, that's how horrible. Like, that's why he can't be president. That's why he will never be president, because that's just the Republican Party. Less than half of them want him to be president, and then you get.
But
Democrats.
that would probably be the case no matter who was running, though.
With
the clown car that is their party.
Well, with the internal problems, to put it more generously, yeah, that is their party. But here's an interesting example of all this, and it's pretty hypocritical. So Megyn Kelly, the attractive anchor, reporter, journalist for Fox News, and Donald Trump hates her, and they're tweeting mean stuff back and forth for months. Here's a quote from her. Quote, "What he really wants is oxygen. He wants television time. So the only thing that is really meaningful to him, the only consequence that would actually have an effect on him, we cannot enact because it would be insane. You cannot ban the presidential frontrunner from a channel." And so what I wrote under that was, no, but you could stop covering him on your show, Megyn Kelly, because she hasn't. She covers him constantly. She's on right after Bill O'Reilly. She's number 2 in the ratings for cable news. O'Reilly's number 1. And she started complaining about O'Reilly not defending her on some specific occasion, and for CNN covering Trump's rally on the day that he didn't go to the GOP debate. So those were her complaints. And so she just says that, like, right, the quote I just said, Trump wants airtime, he wants oxygen, he wants to be on TV. So that's what he lives and breathes on. And then her next thing that she says in the article is, the article itself says, despite the bad blood, Kelly said she'd have Trump on her show anytime. The main question she'd want to ask is, why? I guess, why are you being so mean to me? I guess is what she means. she conceded the fight with Trump has done something for her. Here's Megyn Kelly again. Quote, "One of our babysitters is from Peru," she said, "and she came home one day and told us that she saw my name in the Peruvian papers. I don't think that ever happened before, this particular dust-up. So I'm going to have to give Trump that point. I certainly think it's gotten me much more exposure." So she's just another version of him. She's doing the same thing that he's doing. And I mean, that's her job, is to get people to watch her.
And well,
so it's fine. But it seems to me a little bit odd that this whole article was about her criticizing O'Reilly for covering Trump and CNN for covering Trump too much and not defending her. And yet her next comment is, "But I'd have him on the show anytime. Does he want to come? Do you want to do it now?"
I feel like you get a lot more credit on that side of the aisle for saying things than you ever do for doing them. And I would actually probably tie it to how closely they've...
It's the same thing for the Democrats, dude. Hillary Clinton, her whole career is based on saying things and then doing the opposite in office.
No, but but she doesn't get the credit. You don't give her the credit. But on the right wing side, they've got all those people. The anti-gay guy who gets busted trying to have sex, and then his career isn't usually over. The worst case scenario is maybe it's over for like a couple years, and then he comes right back because he says the right things. Oh. The fact that he's boning rent boys in the bathroom becomes irrelevant to how much he hates the fags. And so. It is funny to watch them talk about this stuff because they all talk about how terrible Trump is, but they still give him the coverage. Right. None of them actually do the thing that they say is moral.
Right.
None of them are willing to.
But the left-leaning channels are culpable in the exact same amount. CNN, MSNBC, though, it's all Trump all day. So they're all. I don't think if beef was here, he'd be having an aneurysm that you're saying is only on the right.
It's unfortunate that one side has hitched their wagon to the religious thing. And as far as I'm concerned, when the left-wing sides do it, there's that recognition that there's no fucking way that Trump is getting elected. Like, name recognition or not, he's not going to be the next president, right, barring like a fucking military coup or something weird.
Or if Hillary's the nominee and gets indicted, that could deliver
possibly, but then I think the Democrats would find a way to just put Bernie in. If she got indicted, like they'd find a way.
Maybe.
And the point, though, is on the left-wing side, they don't want the Republican Party to succeed. So reporting on this stuff is irrelevant to them. They think that they all suck, and so it doesn't matter which ones they report. But on the right-wing side, for them to sit there and pay lip service to, he's terrible for the party, he doesn't represent us, this, that, and the other, we shouldn't be covering him, but anyway, we're going to cover him for the next 4 hours, that is hypocrisy. The other side can say the same thing, and I do think that there is some hypocrisy there, because they do sometimes say...
Well, instead of religion, they hitch their wagon to PC, to the rules of to safe space, to all of that stuff. I mean, they hitch...
Right.
And that's what is angering Trump supporters. They're sick of not being allowed to say what they want, even if it is perceived as racist.
The problem is, of course, that they are allowed to say it, and they're mad about their straw man. They're mad, I'm not allowed to say that, insert racist thing here. It's like, well, you literally just said it. So tell me how you're not allowed to say it.
Well, they're not allowed to say it at work.
Oh, fucking cry me a river. And even then, a lot of them are allowed to say it, because I've heard some crazy shit at work. So really what they're worried about is what? I don't get to be racist and oppress other people at work? Like, oh, again, let me get the world's smallest fucking violin and to play My Heart Bleeds for You. I got into this...
Tell us what you really think.
I got into a big debate with somebody on Facebook just the other day about... access laws, that they thought it was hypocritical. No one has a right to make me do business. And it's like, well, no, but you don't have a right to have a business either.
That's not a right.
Right. And, there is a system in place that lets people be as racist and shitty as they want. It's called making a private organization. Look at the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts is run by terrible people who think atheists aren't good citizens, who think that gay people shouldn't be scouts. They finally let the gays in, but if you're an atheist, you're still not good enough to be a scout. Fuck you guys, frankly.
Yeah.
But they're allowed to do it, and I would never say that they're not, because they're a private organization. Costco, you need a membership, so they're allowed to check my receipt on the way out the door, because they can have their rules, and there is some balance. I don't know all the laws, but
right. Now, serving people, that's what you're talking about.
For serving people, yeah.
The gay cakes.
Gay cakes.
Okay, so tell me
have a private fucking cake organization, then Racist Cakes, LLC, and you'll be a private members-only cake organization.
But isn't you mean... Well, what are they?
We have a system in place where normally they'll say we're open to the public. But then, well, not really. Actually, not the gays. And some people, the best answer some people have is like, well, what if they put a sign up that says they refuse service to anybody?
So what's different between the Boy Scouts and a private cake company? It's this private company.
What I'm saying is that there's a difference between private organizations and organizations that are open to the public. So, like, I don't know the laws across the board, but like Costco in theory could be racist. because they're private. They're members only. Just like Boy Scouts is members only.
Members
So we
only.
have a system that lets you be as shitty as you want to be, but they get mad that when they say we're open to the public, that has to mean that they actually are open to the public. They're like, well, no, we want all the credit of being open to the public, but we don't actually want to have to because screw the gays.
And is there a legal distinction there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's
interesting.
why the Boy Scouts get to. They've been sued, and
Right, because I always we've talked about gay cakes a lot on this show, and I tend to agree with Mark and Brian that let them not serve gays, because then in the end it'll just hurt them, and
but it won't.
No, wait. And then, but now you're making a good point, because and I've always doubted my own position on that, because on one hand I don't think a cake place should be forced to serve anyone, but on the other hand, what was segregation? I don't agree with segregation where it's white only, lunch counter, water fountain, bathroom, etc. I don't agree with that. I don't think I agree with the Civil Rights Act, in other words.
When we talk about this shit, it's always, was the world better or worse? And would the fix make the world better or worse? Like there's some rights you do give up to be part of a society. The free speech stuff, it's like, well, words don't really hurt people, so there's really not a lot of reasons to clamp down on speech, right?
Right.
But you know what? Not being able to fucking eat hurts people. So
yeah,
I'm going to go
not
with,
being able to get a cake. It's a long stretch to say it hurts anyone, because you just go to the next
disagree.
cake shop over.
Well, I'm glad that there happens to be one, but what if you literally can't get a cake in the whole city? That's Kant right there.
I guess
That's the fucking categorical imperative.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, you're right, but this day and age, it would probably be unlikely. But it reminds me of, I read Senator Mike Lee's book, and I annotated it once because he's a fucking asshole. And he made a case that, no state would, states should be allowed to impose religion, but no state would. And just to be clear, he's the fucking senator from Utah.
Right.
You lying sack of shit, right? And segregation, was still a thing when all of our parents were kids. When people are like, well, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah,
Fuck you, it happened 40 years ago.
Yeah, my mom tells me about how her parents, her father went down to South Carolina. They grew up in Connecticut. Her father went down to South Carolina during the war to be in the Air Force. And when he came back, he always told the family how shocked he and his wife were, my grandmother, about the racism down there. And they're from Connecticut, and this is the 40s. So things are pretty racist still in the North, but they went down there and they were shocked. They heard the N-word and everything, and they never used that language, I'm sure they were racist as hell, comparatively. But when they went down there, they were,
I read an article just this morning, and I don't know how true it is because it's it's initial reports of some lady who's married to a serviceman, and he's overseas, and she moved in, told him that she was married, blah, blah, blah. But then the landlord found out, oh, she's married to a black guy. Well, we don't hold to that here, and he kicked him out.
Wow.
Now, I don't know how true that story is. It's first reports. Well, it was on a legitimate news site.
Okay.
It was on Consumerist, which is a legitimate site. It's just whenever a bunch come out at first, you always want to wait until you hear the more reports. But the point just being that shit is still around, and when you talk about my right to have a business, that even though you have a way to be racist, you could make a cake club, and it would be its own separate thing.
What about the little sign that they all buy that says, "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone"? Is that just a sign?
Well, because it's not true.
Right.
There's still an implication that you're going to be open to everyone. The answer the person online was giving me was well, what about if they won't accept large bills? It's well, that relates to the transaction, not to the person.
Oh.
If you don't serve gays, that's not what your sign says. It's just, of course, there are circumstances where you might not be able to serve. It's not going to be universal. But the point being that when they complain, I can't believe a cake maker, it's like, really? So let's see, what's a worse world? A world where a whole town can just say, fucking sucks to be you? Or a world where you have to actually be open to the public when there's a way out for you, but you don't want to take it? I'm sorry. The world where the gay people or the black people or whatever are completely excluded is a worse world. And the thing we give up is so small in comparison that when people make this argument...
But not if you're starting from first principles that homosexuality is a perversion and evil. So you're
which, again, ties back to the religion thing.
Right, it does. Now, this Megyn Kelly thing, remember what I just said? She was angry that... O'Reilly and CNN didn't support her more, and then just went on to completely contradict herself and say that I would have him on the show anytime. Now, here's the comments thread in that article, okay? So these are Republicans. I talk about liberalism eating its own tail a lot. Here's conservatism eating its own tail. Here's in the comments, Larry, this guy is talking to Megyn Kelly. Maybe you shouldn't have made such a sniveling, snide ass of yourself, and they might have supported you. Act like one often enough, and people will treat you as such. So now she must be getting a lot of backlash from conservatives who hate women and like Trump.
It's definitely going to be. It reminds me of when those conservatives who used to say waterboarding was okay,
right?
And every single one who then got waterboarded was like, "Oh wait, no, this is torture."
Yeah,
and same kind of shit here. When people complain about safe spaces or misogyny, yeah. Well, you've never experienced it, so therefore you don't think it's that bad. Yeah. Well, amazing. Well,
so
say
Megyn
something
Kelly,
against Trump,
who's worth $100 million now, is now realizing this war on women might not be a liberal conspiracy theory. This next guy says, all politics aside, and back to principles. The thing that has bothered me the most about all this, quote, I am a woman, hear me roar thing, is when it gets really hot, the lioness always turns to a lion, a cop, a soldier, a judge, Bill O'Reilly, whatever, to fight for their equality, in quotes, and whine when we say, okay, baby, you're on your own with this one. Wow. And then next comment, great point. So they just agreed with that guy who just said that. And then this person, whose name is Tomcat 1088. I am a 69-year-old woman, and I agree. She was woman enough to dig herself into this hole. She shouldn't need the guys to have her back. And furthermore, I don't hear any of the women of Fox coming to her rescue either. But you nailed it. Great comment. I just don't understand why someone would name themselves Tomcat if they're a 69-year-old woman.
Well, they've probably had this AOL account since.
I have an AOL account, Eddie. And then the final comment, I really think it's a blonde thing. So, yeah. So do you have 10 more minutes, Eddie, or not?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, folks. If it makes you feel any better, you don't have to listen to me anymore.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Eddie, for joining us today. I know it was tough for you to be here. So I guess we won't see you next week, but we will maybe the week
sometime,
after. Yeah, we could even do a podcast during the week. Just you and me, or Brian can come over, Mark, and we can do a special one before you go.
That would be cool.
All right. I don't know if this one will ever see the light of day, but thanks for listening, everyone. That was episode 57, Radical Agnostic, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.